Well, to the United States now. A special counsel report about U.S. President Joe Biden is reverberating through Washington and has the White House attempting to contain the fallout. The report says the president should not be criminally charged for mishandling documents, citing Biden's age and failing memory as the reasons why. Caroline Malone has more.
President Biden and White House officials pushing back strongly against some of the allegations that have come out of this special report into his handling of classified documents. Biden in particular in a White House address saying that he doesn't have issues with his mental capacity, doesn't have memory problems, that in fact he was interviewed over October 8th and 9th, those 2 days following the Hamas attack on Israel, and that he was somewhat distracted by international events at that time. Some of the White House officials have spoken as well about their personal experience with Biden, saying that no one in this building, no one in the White House would ever say that he has issues with his mental capabilities. Some of the strongest statements, though, coming from the Vice President, Kamala Harris, who spoke about her life as a former prosecutor and her experience there, and how she can say that she thinks this report has really gone too far.
The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated, gratuitous. And so I will say that when it comes to the role and responsibility of a prosecutor in a situation like that, we should expect that there would be a higher level of integrity than what we saw.
There is a distinction made in this report between the case against Biden that is now closed on the classified documents and the one against Donald Trump, who's the likely Republican candidate for the president again this year. The case against him has gone as far as a federal case of obstruction of justice, and that is likely to start later on in a few months' time. The question is, will it impact voters? Will it have an impact on who decides to go to the polls for either Biden or the likely Republican candidate Trump? At the moment, about 3/4 of all voters say they are concerned with Biden's age and his physical ability as an 81-year-old. Fewer voters are concerned with Trump and the fact that he has this plethora of cases against him. But of course, that could change if Trump actually goes to trial and is found guilty of anything. Caroline Malone for CBC News in Washington.
All right, to discuss the political fallout from this report, let's bring in my next guest. Michele Manatt is a Democratic strategist and former senior policy advisor at the Department of State. She joins us from Washington, D.C. tonight. Alex Olson is a Republican strategist. He joins us from Tampa, Florida. Michele, let me start with you. What's the strategy here for the Democratic Party moving forward after that press conference last night, which was widely seen by a lot of political watchers as the wrong move?
Well, the important finding is that there will not be a criminal prosecution of Joe Biden or anyone else in the case. That really is the story here. And the way it's been kind of built out like the layers of an onion with other aspects is really not at all the point. The strategy of our party for the good of our country is to focus people on what Joe Biden and this White House does and will continue to do to deliver for the needs of the American people and for all of the American people. Joe Biden has tried to be a president for everyone from the beginning. So we're going to just keep our heads and our eyes focused on the future and focused on the critical agenda that the president and with his allies in Congress have been delivering on. What we saw this week that was tragic was the failure of a long negotiated piece of legislation on immigration reform, which would help us in our relations with Canada, frankly. And that failed because Donald Trump wants a political issue, doesn't want to actually deliver anything that means a better life and better functioning government for people here at home.
Okay, Alex, if Michele, as she says, the strategy is just to stay the course, is that going to work?
I don't believe so. And one thing that Michele mentioned that I find quite interesting is she said that everything else is all noise, right? The questions about age and Biden's mental fortitude, it's all noise, and the criminal proceedings take center. But for me, as a young American and frankly a young Republican, I think the question of age is the most important thing on the table here. 2/3 of voters question whether or not Biden's age will affect his presidency. And I know that Trump is leading with voters under 35, 37 points to 33. So I think the question of age is actually extremely relevant here, and it's something that we need to look at moving forward. And I think if the Democratic Party doesn't start, kind of reversing this trend where they've become the most exclusive elderly home in the country, it's going to affect them at the polls moving forward.
I thought that was the Senate, but according to Nikki Haley. But Michele, let me ask you. I mean, why should age not be part of the conversation? I mean, clearly it is right now, but why shouldn't that be a fair assessment? I mean, there have been, multiple occasions, including yesterday, where the president mixed up the president of Mexico's name. Why shouldn't this be a consideration?
I'm not saying it shouldn't be part of the conversation. It is part of the conversation, and we're going to continue to live with that week by week. So I think part of what we need to do is put out there aggressively people who work directly with Joe Biden day in and day out, and let them talk about what they experience when they're in meetings with him. Not only people who are totally sympathetic to him, but other people. I think we need a lot more of that. And I think it's forthcoming. People from the private sector, people who are working on AI, people who are working on cancer research. We need to see more of those voices. I'm not saying it's not an issue at all. The facts are the facts. This is part of the America we now live in because of what we experienced and endured through the Donald Trump presidency, is the fact that we have to struggle to even come to a common ground on what facts are. So we're in a difficult environment. There's no doubt about that. Both of these men are much older. So are the leaders of our Senate. Look at the age of Mitch McConnell, who misspeaks from time to time. It's a misspeaking that happens. Is that really something to pull someone down, to disassemble someone over? I don't think so. It's really a question of who's got the judgment and who's got the decency to work with all the complexities of our country. And in that, if you put it in that framing, there's no contest. Joe Biden comes out well ahead of Donald Trump on every single count. Donald Trump has been indicted 4 times since he left office. That is not the case for Joe Biden.
And ultimately, do you think, Alex, that will be the calculation for voters here when they look at the character of both of these candidates? And we're assuming, of course, Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the two candidates, this is what's going to come into play. I go with President Trump to rallies across the country. I see how he's pushing through. I think he has some type of mystical aging serum because he is more energized than ever as he ages. But you put that in comparison to President Biden, he's not coming out of the basement. He's not going to rallies. I think they just canceled an interview he had after the Thursday gaffe, mixing up the president of Egypt and the president of Mexico.
Right.
Look, when you look at the two of them, it's going to be the question of who is fit to run this country. We are in a time where international fires are sparking across the globe. We need someone who we can make sure can lead America and protect American interests. And if you look at that right now, someone who is in clear cognitive decline cannot do that. They cannot protect our country. They cannot protect our borders. They cannot mediate between foreign powers. And I think that's what voters are going to look at moving forward, is who is going to represent America the best. Because at the end of the day, the president of the United States represents America as a whole. And if the president of the United States can't even put together a clear sentence, there's something wrong there.
Okay, you get the last word. We got to leave it there for this evening. Michele Manatt and Alex Olson. Michele is a Democratic strategist, that is, and former senior policy advisor at the Department of State. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Alex is a Republican strategist. He joined us from Tampa, Florida.